Okay. We'll start exactly at 10:10 as we have given the time. Okay, good morning all. I hope I am audible to you. Now, as far as current session is been concerned, we will discuss about some data types in C++ and their correlation with the memory requirements and the correlation with the memory requirements and also study the time complexity of various programming structures. For that, we have chosen one of the online compilers, that is for execution of C++ program. I'll just share the screen with you. Participants, are you able to view the screen? Yes, participants, able to view the screen?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Okay. Now, as far as C++ is concerned, there are various flavors of it. That means it is machine dependent actually, and based on the operating system itself, because we have Turbo C and we have Linux based GNU-C, and also we have VC++, that is Visual C++. all them have a more or less flexibilities, but over here we are discussing about the syntax related to C++, that is based on Linux systems, and some of the Turbo C modules or header files may not work with the Linux one. That is the only the difference. There is no coding difference. So over here we can see the two lines over here. First, this is a simple hello world program. The highlighted line is nothing but we are including a module named IOStream. This IOStream is input output stream. Full form is input output stream, and instead of input we are writing hash include. So this hash include is a preprocessor directive. You should remember that it is a preprocessor directive which is used for including or importing a particular library file, either user defined or system defined. So this IOStream is used for C++ and it is a system defined file. Now over here we will be using some namespace that is standard. So std is short form for that. So using namespace standard is the most important namespace. We have to specify it in Linux. Sometimes this is omitted in Turbo C syntax, but as far as Linux is concerned, using namespace standard is required. Let's move to the program structure. Over here, the program start with the main module and it has a return type, that is int or void. So you can write int if you want to return some statement such as return 0. It indicates return 0, that is your program executed successfully. If your return code is anything negative, then there is some error in the program. So we have learned only two notations. One is how to define the main, and another is there is a return statement at the end of the main function. Now here the block of statement is defined by curly brackets. So anything with starting of curly brackets, any closing of curly brackets is termed as a block, that is a code block. So this is one code block. Okay, so this is the basic program. Now instead of printf, we have to write cout, that is console output, and here there are redirection operator. So for input there is the function named cin, that is console input, and for output it is cout. So as there was print statement for output in Python, here we have cout, and it has only a redirection operator. After that, whatever is written is printed on the console. Let us see the basic example. You can see the output over here is hello world. Lecture solution. After an hour. Okay. So over here, now we are going to study various basic data types and their available size. So I have just written a program over here. Since we are Turbo C compiler, so we have made minor changes over here, and I'll just put the basic loop for studying purpose. Just observe the output on the online compiler. So inside the main, I'll replace some statements. Participants able to view the code? Yes?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now let us see what it is. We have the first data type, that is short integer. We'll be going to see the size of this short integer, that is memory requirement to store the short integer. Then we will study about the memory requirements for integer data type. Another data type in C++ is float. So we have defined our variable for that. Next to it we have character data type, and then we have long, and we have double. Even there is long double, and another data type is string, that is character array. So over here there is a difference that I have defined a character and a name. So name is character array, that is termed as string. Now for SI it is nothing but a short integer. This is the size of short integer we will see over here. Similarly, we will have I'll just make a change over here. Short integer is in bytes. So let us check how many bytes it is. SI, and we have DL, that is double. So double size. We have written a simple program. Now let us see what it is. First we will try to print the size required, that is the memory required by short integer. Then we created a program for memory requirements of integer data type, then memory requirements for floating point data type, memory required for character data types, long data type, double data type, and string. So in as far as Python is been concerned, we were limited to very what you can say, data types are very short, and they have optimized the data type. But over here it is the core language, that is C and C++. It has lots of data types defined within. It gives us flexibility such that we can use appropriate data type and save memory. So let us run the program and check the output. Now over here I just reduce the screen so that you will be able to view all the output. First is size of short integer in bytes. You can see it is 2 bytes. As we have estimated previously, that is integers are of 2 bytes, but some compilers define it as short integer. Everyone getting? So the size, that is memory requirement by integers, which is of type short, is require 2 bytes. Now let us look to the second equation. Size of integer in bytes. So when the data type is pure integers, then we require 4 bytes of storage. So this byte of storage is depending on the value it can consume. Next is the size of float. Float is nothing but we have exponent, Mantis and exponents. We have studied that also in the previous lecture. So over here it is of 4 bytes. Next is size of character. So you have to remember that 1 byte is equal to 8 bits, and this is nothing but 1 byte. So it will comprise about 2 raised to 8, that is total 256 characters can be accomplished. 256 combinations or values can be consumed in character data type. So there can be 256 symbols can be stored in character data type. Next is size of long data data type in bytes, it is 8. So you can take down this is size of long data type in bytes. In C++, it is 8 bytes. Now, size of double is in bytes, 8 bytes. When we define double as a data type, then the size of that memory requirement we can say for that variable is 8. Now you might have remembered that we have defined the student record database. In that we have taken the name of the student. So suppose we have taken the name of the student as 20 characters, that is array of 20. So we call it as a string which is of size 20. You can see that it is 1 byte into 20, so it is 20 bytes. We have proved over here that some compilers will give different answers for the size of integers and size of string, as it is compiler dependent, that various compilers will give you different answers. So this is some basic standard that integers give you 2 bytes memory, it requires 2 bytes memory. Then we have 4 bytes integer also, that is you can say int 16-bit or 32-bit. Then floating point is 4 bytes, character is 90%, it is 1 bytes, and long we have 8 and double we have 8. So this is required to estimate the memory requirement or space complexity of your program. Everyone getting the concept how memory is being assigned to each of these variables. Now let us study one more variable and we will find what it is. So I defined one variable, that is integer pointer int star p. So it is called as a pointer, and let us see what is the output of this pointer, how much size it requires. Over here it is and let us see what is the size of it. So I'll run the program over here. So it has given the pointer size as 8 bytes. Are you able to see, participants?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So over here, memory, when it is defined, this is called as compile time allocation. So when your program is compiling, is allocating memory to each and every resources or variables you have defined. Everyone getting this? So this is called as compile time behavior. So some time is required by the program to allocate memory to each of the variables. So we say that it is a compile time behavior. So when we comprise about calculate the time complexity, there are two parts. One is compile time and another is execution time. So what the highlighted part is allocation of memory during compile time, and when we are printing the output, this part which is highlighted. This is a part of runtime behavior. So we have two time complexities. One is the compile time and another is the runtime. In most of the system, people eliminate or ignore the compile time. So this compile time complexity for compiling the entire code, for syntax errors, etc., is termed as compile time, and it is sometimes ignored in program calculations. So now let us see what is runtime. So runtime, he execute one statement 2 statements, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So can we say that it will require at least 9 time units of your processor to execute the code? Yes, participants, are you able to understand the statement? Since there are 9 statements that will be executed by the processor, therefore we can say it will take at least 9 time units to execute the code.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So when it is defined in such a way, we one second, we just say that the code complexity is nothing but big O of a particular constant 9. So omega notations, or we can say a big O notation. So this is called as big O notation. And in worst case, it will take at least 9 time units. That is, so this is a constant. 9 is a constant. So it will not expected to execute or take more time than this of the compiler. So this is called as constant time complexity. You can take down, since there are 9 statements, so we this refer to as constant time complexity. So this exists in practice. Now let us move with the practical examples for more complex nature of the program. So when you find that the time complexity is a constant, that means there may be some number of statements which are to be executed, which is a constant. It is not going to change in any way. So we say that is O of n. Now I'll put another code. So over here we say it is analysis of a loop. So I put a loop over here. And let us print it value. We added some more lines of code. So this is analysis of a loop. I change my program from constant complexity to some different complexity. We design a counter. So count 1 is initially 0 and we specify n is equal to 100. We have taken a for loop. So for initial value 0, terminating condition that is I is less than equal to n, which is 100, and I plus plus is the incrementing step. Now let us remove this and we'll just increment the counter and let us check the output. Over here we are going to print the value of counter and the value of I out of the loop. Let us run the program. You can see the count value, you can observe it is 101 outside the loop. It simply implies that this loop, for loop, is executed n plus 1 where n is equal to 100. Everyone getting the concept? Yes, participants?
Yes, sir.
Okay, count 1 value is equal to 101, which is printed outside the loop, and it simply means that the for loop is executed n plus 1 times. Then we'll check the value of I. So I is 101. You can see that I is to be limited to 100. That means the loop was terminated when the value of I was 101. Okay. So what it simply implies is that this function, that is for loop, was executed n plus 1 times, and since the counter within it is limited to n plus 1. So we can say this was incremented by same n number of times, or n plus 1. Finally, we print this statement. So it will take some values for time quantum. So if we say that it is take only one time quantum, and finally this line will also take one time unit. So the total time unit you can calculate it n plus 1, n plus 1. So I calculate it over here, n plus 1, again n plus 1 added with n plus 1, and we have two statements over here, that is display of count, and again we have display of count. So we add to it over here. Also you can see that these lines are using some assignment and memory operations. So we can allocate it to f of 1, and over here we can allocate it to f of 1. So these two will also be added. Then we have to estimate the total time. So total time over here is nothing but this is 5, 6. So it is 2n plus 6. This is the total time required. If we drop the constant terms, so we have to drop the constant term, then it simply implies it is having a time complexity of 2n. Now again 2 is a constant. If we drop that also, then we get the complexity of O of n. N can be any unit. It can be set to 100, it can be set to 1000 or so. So whatever changes, if you don't know the size of n, sometimes the user enter the size of loop, and it incurs to be that complexity is 2n plus 6, and finally we reduce it by removing the constant to 2n, and finally we get the complexity of O of n. That means we have the worst case, and this is the best case. In fact, we get in best case it is even in n, and worst case it will take 2n plus 6. So over here we will study three parameters: worst case, best case, and average case. Calculating average case is little complicated, but we will still have to do that. So at least the basics everyone understood this. Based on the frequency, F stands for frequency of that instruction. Yes, participants, understood the basic program?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now let us make some simple changes to the program. Yes.
कोणसाठी नाव आणि आपल्याला पोर्टलवर फक्त ते 10 टाकता येईल
म्हणजे
पोर्टलवर ई कंटेंट
1 second. Okay, so we were over here, and we find that there is complexity for this. Now let us modify this code with instead of putting n I is equal to less than equal to n, I just remove the equal to sign and see what changes are performed at the output and how it is impacting the time complexity of the program. You can see that. Okay, one more change over here. I have used the if statement. So you can see the count value. It is reduced to 100. Okay. So over here, what is the change is that if you observe the value of I, that means it is terminating when I is equal to 100. So it is always f of n. But the count value is now, you can say it is reduced to f of n. So since the loop is executed 100 number of times, 0 to 99 is 100. So that is n and not n plus 1. So over here we can reduce it. The complexity is n plus 1. And we will have the complexity over here as n plus 5. Yes, participants understood some basic changes. So when only a equal to sign has been changed, then there is so much changes are been updated. Okay, let us observe another variation in this. Instead of starting with 0, we will start with 1. And let us observe the changes. You can see the count value is now 99. So it is 1 to 99, that is the loop is terminated at 100. That means value of I, that is n plus 1 is true. And naturally the counter is now n minus 1. Everyone able to understand that a simple changes in the starting value and the terminating value will impact the time complexity of the program. As participants able to understand. Now, little more important concept, we are just thinking about clean statement. Now we are increasing the complexity. Let us see if I have a condition for calculation, that is if I mod equal to 2 equal to 1, that means if it is even or odd. So first we'll go for even numbers. So I put this as I mod 2 equal to 0, then a counter should be incremented. Let us increase it for 100. So I put I is equal to 1 to 100. Let us run the program and check the output. You can see that exactly 50 values are being counted as even numbers and the loop is terminated n plus 1, that is 101. So you should remember that the loop, when there is for loop, you should remember that it is f of n plus 1, and within the loop any statement is there, that is f of n. So over here this condition is tested for f of n times, but it is true only 50, half of that amount of time. So we say that it is f of n by 2. This is the minor change you have to remember. If there is some conditions, that condition is executed for a frequency of n, and with the statement which is executed for the true part is called for n by 2 times. So the complexity we are getting over here, that it is 100 numbers are being counted, and within that 50 numbers were odd. So when you write an odd even program, the complexity changes. Yes, participants understood how the statement within the for loop impacts the time complexity. Yes, participants.
Yes, sir.
Okay, little variation will make. I'll put this as equal to 1. Now we'll go for odd numbers and run the program. we got the same results, that is odd or even numbers are 50, between 1 to 100 and 101 is there. Now let us make a simple change. I put equal to sign, remove the equal to sign and see the output. Okay. Make it for odd numbers, even numbers. You can see that even numbers are 49. So this mistakes or we make that we imply that is not always true. We have some variations based on the only the equal to sign is concerned. Now this were as far as one-dimensional data is concerned. We can move to two-dimensional data. Now we are increasing the complexity. We are working with two-dimensional data or matrices. I'll share that code with you, how two-dimensional data is being used. So over here, we will reset the values for I and j and make some loop for two-dimensional data. Okay, so the line block which I am highlighting is nothing but the two-dimensional data. So we have rows and columns. For example, you can think that two-dimensional data is a table that contains some rows and columns. So over here, I represent the rows. So there are 10 rows, and J represents some column. So there are 10 columns, 10 rows, and 10 columns. So 10 by 10, then naturally equal to 100 elements in the table. Let us set the counter to 0 and we specify n is equal to 10. Over here, we will check how many times the I loop executed and j loops executed. We will use the simple counter method to count the values and see the complexity of the code. We are not getting a single line of output, we are getting multiple lines because this cout is written in the for loop of I. So this belongs to this loop and this counter belongs to the inner loop. So we have outer loop with the rows and inner loop with the column, and we are counting the values. So let us see what was being counted. So in the first run of the j for loop, that is row, we find that count value was 10 and the value of I is 0 as it is specified. Then in the second run, the counter value was incremented by 10, that is 20, and we get I is equal to 1. Similarly, the counter value in the third run is become 30 and your I value is incremented by 1, that is 2. Then we have the 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100. So you can say that this loop or the counter was being executed for n into n times. So what we have studied, if the value of n is 10, then it is 10 multiplied by 10, simply it is 100. So can we say that the count statement was executed with the frequency of n into n? Yes, participants understood the program?
Understood, sir.
Okay. So we have two for loops, so two-dimensional data. My initialization of rows and columns is just 10, and we have n into n. Now let us make a little simple variation. I put another variable, that is m is equal to 5, and let's say over here instead of n I am putting m and check the program. So this is also a two-dimensional example where the size of rows and columns are not going to match with each other, they differ. So it is not n square, it is, I have to write int. You can see that last line, the counter is now 50. So we can say that it is n into n to 5, and therefore the counter was incremented into m into n, that is the frequency of execution of count 1. So this belongs to two-dimensional data. Also the variation same. If we change I is equal to 1, then it is going to impact. If we going to change j is equal to 1, that is going to impact the output. And finally we should get the internal loop, which is having the frequency of n into m, and over here we can say the for loop is executing with a different proportion. So let us say this is executing n plus 1 with the frequency, and the internal loop we know that it is executed n number of times. Over here we change it, m plus 1 is the frequency of the loop. So external loop and internal loop are executed based on, and the frequency changes for the internal and external. So participants, just a minute, some work is there, give me 2 minutes. So you can observe that the dimension of the data is varying, and therefore the statement over here is also changing. Now let us move to the basics of it. I'll put it again n, and we'll count that it is concerned with n. So we can say that it is external is executed n plus 1. So let us make a change over here. The first for loop is n plus 1. I have put n plus 1. Then the second for loop, we have n into n plus 1. So it is n square plus n. So we put it over here, n square plus n, and the counter is executed. Something is n into n, because n over here is nothing but n. So can we say that it is simply n square? So let us say that it is n square. Again, we have some frequencies for counting, that is over here this statement is executing an output, and that will add one time complexity. Initialization 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. So we will add more 5 statements to the total time complexity. Now let us derive it into some equations. So we will first find the constants. 1 is the constant. Then we have this 6. So we have total, there's 7 as the constants. Then find the number of n. So we have one n over here, and this is the second n. We have 2n. So we add 2n to the complexity. Now let us move to over here n square. So we have 2n squares over here. So let us say it is 2n square. What becomes to this equation? Can we say it is of the form 2x square plus 2x plus 7? Yes, participants. So it is a type of polynomial. Do you agree? Yes, participants. Is it a type of a polynomial? Okay, ax square plus bx plus c. So it is of some form, that is ax square plus bx plus c. So it is a polynomial. So therefore we can say when some programs are being concerned, there may be a time complexity of polynomial time complexity. Okay. So this exists in programming. So based on the polynomial time, we can decide the type of complexities within a particular program. Now let us reduce the equation. We have to remove the constants. So we remove the constants over here. So we get 2n square plus 2n, and we have removed the constants. Now it is wise that we have to take the maximum of this 2 n's. So we have to take the maximum term or higher order term, we can say. So we will choose the higher order term over here is 2n square. What it simply means, that means if we reduce the n square, then the time for our program is naturally be reduced. We have 2n square. Finally, we can derive it can be an equation of n square. So we say it is du of n square. This is removing the constants, and finally we remove the 2 also, that is 2n square. So we remove 2 and we get the time complexity for n square. Okay, participants, are you getting the basic concept of complexities? I recommend that it needs lots of practice, and deriving complexity is necessary for understanding the program structure. So based on this, some graphs are being implemented. So what will be the polynomial time complexity of a particular code? So when we say it is a polynomial time, then it will be of some format, that is ax square plus bx plus c, and so on. I hope everyone understood the concept of time frequencies, that is time complexity and space complexity. You can take the snapshot for the program over here. Now for attendance, there is a code for today's session, that is CO01, and after that you can use 05. So you can give the attendance for today's session. Any questions from the participants? Yes, participants, any questions? Okay, so if there are no questions, we'll terminate the session over here. I hope the attendance URL is with you. If it is not available, then you can share within them. It is available on the group. So use this code for attendance of today's lecture. Thank you very much.